Hi, my name is Doug Payton, and today I would like to talk to you about how you could use Satellite City products in your guitar shop. I first came across Satellite City products while studying at the Guitar Craft Academy at Musicians Institute in Hollywood, taught by John Carruthers. He taught us several ways we could use these products during the course of repair work, and I would like to share some of those with you today. So without further ado, let's get started. The first step in doing your refret on your maple neck is you want to match the stain color of the fretboard to the existing stain color of the rest of the guitar, like for say on the headstock or on the back side of the neck. Now what you can do is just get what I used here was just some vintage amber tint, and then to dilute the stain, because it's going to be pretty dark if you try to just put it straight on the wood, I use Satellite City's Super Solvent is a great way to dilute it. Now the ratio is about 1 drop of the actual stain, which is pretty dark again like I said, and about 10 drops of the super solvent in order to dilute it. Now what's great about the super solvent is it's a fairly light way of diluting it, so you can kind of add and subtract as much as you can on there and use a tester piece of maple to try and match the color. Now I've already put the stain on here, so I've matched the color as best I can to what I wanted, and what, like I said, was like that vintage look to it. And so now that it's dried, I'm going to start applying the cyanoacrylate or CA glue to the fretboard in order to start getting the shine that I want out of it. Now typically if you were just doing a refret on a maple neck and you had just sanded back the finish on it, what you were going to end up having to do is taking it into your spray booth and respraying it. Now using the hot stuff grade glue, this is going to be the thinnest of the 3 glues. You're going to want to apply a liberal amount to the paper towel here and try to wipe as evenly as possible across the fretboard. Now you don't have to get it perfect because you're going to be building up layer upon layer of this until you get a good amount that you can sand back and still be able to buff without burning through and getting back into the maple. Now as soon as you get that on there, you're going to want to use the accelerator and spray it so it just mists over the top of it. You don't want to get it too close and spray along here, and you don't want to get it too far away because it's not going to have any effect. But what the accelerator is going to do is it's going to make it an instant cure, so that you're going to be able to move the process of refinishing this guitar along very quickly. So now that you've built up about 12 to 15 layers of super glue on the fretboard itself, the next step is sanding it back in order to buff it out. What you're going to need is a radius block that's at the proper radius of the fretboard and some 400 grit sanding paper. You only need to take it to about 400 grit in order to buff it out properly. So in order to check your work as you go along, what you can do is take a damp paper towel and wipe off all the dust that you just got on there, sanding it back, and then take a nice close look at it and see if you can find any ridges, shiny spots, anything like that along the fretboard. So where you do see all the shiny spots, and you'll see some other spots that are getting a little bit dull now, you're going to want to redirect your hand so you're hitting all of those spots. Now this takes a little bit of time, but it's comparable to sanding back something like polyurethane or any other spray paint that you would use on the neck itself. But again, the setting time of putting the finish on there is considerably less. So now that I've got it sanded back evenly, I applied some medium buffing compound to my buffing wheel. Now conventionally this could be done on a pedestal buffer as well, but for the purpose of this, I'm just going to do it on a drill chuck buffing wheel. You don't need to put too much pressure on it as you buff. You may want to start out with a good amount of pressure using the medium grade compound and then move up to something finer or extra fine and take the pressure off gradually as you do it in order to get the shine to really pop out. So now you've completed buffing out the neck and you've got your brand new CA finish on here. It's shiny and it's strong, and the last things you're going to need to do is just clean out these slots and make sure they're ready for you to put your frets in. Using the CA glue has been time effective, cost effective for me just now. The total process taking about 45 minutes. So the more you practice with the Satellite City hot stuff glue, you'll be able to do this job quicker and more efficiently than if you were painting it conventionally with lacquer. Now that you've completed refinishing your maple neck using CA glue, I'm going to use the same hot stuff glue in order to install a fret. The first thing you're going to need to do is run your straight fret through the fret winder in order to get it to the right radius of the fingerboard. Once you've got that, you're going to want to cut a length, leaving about 1/4 of an inch on either side of the neck in order for you to apply the glue once you want to set it in. So you're going to have to repeat this process with every fret since the taper of the neck is going to widen. So now that you've got the fret cut to the width that you need it, you're going to want to install it so you have just a little bit of space hanging over on each side so you can apply the glue. Now hammering it in, you want to use something like a sandbag so you'll be able to hit through the neck rather than hitting it straight down on the table. So you just want to start lightly tapping it in on one side to make sure it's secure in the slot, and then follow along hitting it harder going across the neck to make sure that it's going to be secured on the left all the way to the right. Now you're going to take the tip of the super glue cap here and rest it just on the tang and allow that super glue just to wick down inside. You want to follow that process on the other side, and it really doesn't take much. The glue is going to naturally wick down inside that fret slot and cover that fret tang with glue, holding it in place. Now once you've got it in there, you want to just take your accelerator and again just mist it in order to set that in there tightly. If you wait a few seconds, that accelerator is going to make it cure instantly, and then you can take your fret end nippers and cut the edge of the fret off. Now that you've cut off the fret ends, you're going to be able to just repeat that process with each fret slot until you've got all your frets firmly in place. So this is the finished product of using hot stuff glue to refinish and refret a maple neck. I've done the CA finish on the fretboard and used the hot stuff glue to install all these frets. The next thing I'm going to show you is how you can use Satellite City products in order to remove or replace an existing bone or plastic nut in this case. So the first thing you're going to want to do is use the super solvent and just bead a line right across the back side on the fretboard between the nut and the fretboard. And what's going to happen is the solvent's going to wick down inside underneath the nut and loosen up some of the existing glue inside of there. So you generally want to give it a few seconds, 30 seconds to a minute, and just let it sit in there and it'll start doing its magic, just breaking up the existing glue that was in there. In the case of this, we have a little bit of back support coming from this truss rod plate, or similarly in like a Gibson style guitar, you're going to have a nut that's seated down inside the wood. So you want to make sure you give it enough time to loosen that glue so that you're going to be able to tap it out real gently. So that should be about enough time. And I'm just going to have something that's putting pressure all the way across the front of that nut and tap it gently from behind here. So what that's going to do is just move that away from the back side of the fretboard, allowing me to just simply remove it. So once you got your nut removed, what you're going to want to do is clean off any of the excess glue on the bottom of the nut here. You can use sandpaper, and sometimes I put a little bit of solvent on the sandpaper to help dissolve the glue that's in there. What you're going to end up doing is using the glue on the bottom side of this nut so it will bond inside the nut slot on the guitar. Now what I would recommend is either using the specialty or super T model glues, because they're gap filling and they expand, and it also gives you some time to perhaps put a clamp on if you need to. For the purposes of this, I'm going to use the specialty grade, which is the thickest grade of Satellite City glues, and just put a small amount on the bottom side of the nut here. Now, like I said before, this is a gap filling glue, so if any wood has been removed from the inside of the nut slot, it's going to help to fill in some of those gaps where the wood has been removed, and just create a better contact inside the nut slot, as well as help create more sustain inside the guitar when it's being played. So once you've got it set in there nice and securely, there it is, you can either use a clamp to clamp it down here, use the strings on top of it, or in the case of the fact that I'm putting the same nut right back in the same slot, all I need to do is just make sure it's firmly seated in there and allow it about 30 minutes of dry time until it's finally dried. So before I get started showing you how to do a drop fill on a guitar's finish, I want to point out that cyano products are not good to use on nitrocellulose lacquer. They're safe to use on polyurethane products, but use with nitrocellulose lacquer can actually melt the lacquer and cause a cloudy complexion to appear. The best way to do it is to test for the lacquer and find out if you're working with polyurethane, which is safe, or nitrocellulose, which is not. You want to use some of the super solvent on a rag, a dry rag, and look under the pickup cavities, or if you have a guitar with a pick guard, remove the pick guard and test it on the paint underneath there. This is a safe way to ensure that you're either working with polyurethane or nitrocellulose without actually damaging the guitar's finish. So the next job I'm going to perform is using the Super T medium thickness glue in order to fill a ding on the body of the guitar. So as you can see, This has been a slight ding in this guitar. There's several dings in this guitar. It was a beater that I had around the shop. But what you can use is the Super T is a medium thickness in comparison to the thin thickness of the hot stuff, so you have to build up less layers in order to fill the ding in the guitar. So this is a good time to use the Pro Tips so you can get a really definite small dot inside that ding and have a little bit more control over how the glue spreads. So what I want to do is just get it right over the ding itself and try to fill that with this glue. Now it's okay if it bubbles up a little bit because we're going to sand it back later. So once your glue is cured, you're going to want to start by scraping it away with a razor blade. Now just take a common razor blade and give it a slight bend, and then take masking tape and wrap it around the sides of the blade, roughly the width of the dent and the glue that is now cured. So the first thing you're going to do is just try and scrape away at the little bump that's been made by the glue curing on top of the ding. So now that you've scraped away the bump made from the cured glue, you're going to want to go gradually through different steps of sandpaper in order to now blend it in with the rest of the finish. Using Super T glue is a great way to fix dings and dents on the guitar. After you've sanded it and buffed it out, your customer's not even going to know the ding was ever even there. The procedures I've shown you today are simply some of the ways you can use Satellite City products in your guitar shop. They've proven to be beneficial to me at saving time and money. I hope you can see for yourself why these products would be beneficial for you as well.